Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, I thought that I would talk about this little conversation that somewhat piqued my interest. Now, in this video, unfortunately, I'm not really going to be able to review any videos, but overall, I will talk about a video that I ended up reviewing that somewhat piqued my interest. And I thought that I would talk about it because I thought that it would just be somewhat of an interesting conversation. So, this may be one of the shorter videos that I have on this subject, but when it comes down to it, I still think all in all that this is going to be a little bit of a good breakdown video. But I ended up reviewing a video by Mr. Blueblood Sports TV, I believe about almost a week ago when it comes down to it. Apparently this video was reviewed or released about 6 days ago, and if you guys want to go ahead and check this video out, you certainly can. I'll put it in the comment section or the description box down below. But sometimes I like to review Mr. Blueblood Sports TV's channel because I like to see certain people's opinions, especially in the boxing world. And there's this one video, if you want to check it out, where it says, "Shocking, Canelo Alvarez and Eddie Reynoso agrees to now face Jamal Charlo." And Blueblood Sports TV, the reason why I wanted to review this video is because Blueblood Sports TV said something, in my opinion, that pretty much overall showed his true opinion of Canelo Alvarez. And in my opinion, I've been saying the same thing about Saul Canelo Alvarez for the past few years, especially ever since that I've realized he's just on another level compared to overall pretty much anyone around him, or on another level. Now, there's certain fighters all in all that in terms of athletic gifts and even in terms of a skill set that I believe all in all are somewhat on the Canelo level, or certain people that are extremely talented fighters that are top pound for pound fighters. Sure, when I take a look at Gervonta Tank Davis, Vasyl Lomachenko, Terrence Bud Crawford, Errol Spence Jr., Alexander Usyk, Tyson Fury. Those are the fighters, in my opinion, that when I take a look at them, at least at the current moment in time, they have proved to me, on an athletic level and also in terms on a skill set level that, in my opinion, they look to be on a higher level usually compared to their contemporaries. But what Mr. Blueblood Sports TV pretty much admitted in this video is what I've been saying really for the past few years about Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez. Ever since, in my opinion, he has gotten that victory in the rematch over Gennady Golovkin, when I just take a look around at these weight divisions, especially at the 160 and 168 pound weight divisions, I do not truly believe that Canelo Alvarez has really any worthy contemporaries, Now, what do I necessarily mean by that? Is that me saying that I do not want to see the fights between Canelo and Jamal Charlo, or Canelo and Demetrius Andrade, or David Benavidez, or a couple of the other guys? That's not what I'm saying at all. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, if you are going to possibly defeat that of a Canelo Alvarez, I think that you're going to have a transcendent skill set. And when I take a look at Canelo Alvarez, he's an all-time great fighter if I've ever seen one. That's why when I take a look at Canelo Alvarez, I compare him not only to the level of some of the other all-time great fighters that I've seen, but I compare him to the former number one pound-for-pound greats. I compare him to that of Floyd Mayweather Jr. I compare him that to Manny Pacquiao. I compare him to that of Roy Jones Jr. Now, in my opinion, would I necessarily quite put him on that level as of yet? Because in my opinion, all those fighters that I just listed off, you could debate them within your top 10 boxers of all time. Whoever you have there is your business. But in my opinion, those three, they certainly have their debate there. Would I necessarily put Canelo Alvarez on that level quite as of yet? I'm not going to put him on that level quite as of yet because I still think that he has some proving still left to go. There is a lot of contenders out there. You do have Jamal Charlo. You do have David Benavidez. You do have Demetrius Andrade, Archer Beterbiev, Joe Smith Jr., Dimitri Bivol. And, that's not even bringing up the cruiserweights that possibly Canelo Alvarez may go after. But if Canelo Alvarez, if he does become a 5-weight division champion, if he is able to go up to cruiserweight and win a belt there, which I think is very possible, if he also was able to defeat that of Jamal Charlo, David Benavidez, my point being is this: if he's able to defeat the vast majority of these contenders, there's not only going to be a great push for Canelo Alvarez to be the greatest Mexican fighter of all time and the greatest fighter of his era, there's going to be a great push for Canelo Alvarez being the greatest fighter of all time. And if he is able to get past all those contenders, he will have a right overall to be in that conversation. Does that mean that definitively, in my opinion, he will be greater than any other fighter that I've necessarily ever seen? No, but I don't really think that the GOAT conversation in terms of boxing, I don't really think that it's a definitive one anyway. But my point being is this: do I think that Canelo Alvarez, when I just take a look at Jamal Charlo, do I see that as a 50-50 fight? No, I don't. And obviously, Mr. Blueblood Sports TV must agree with somewhat of what I say because he somewhat said the similar thing in this video. Now, the interesting thing is that Blueblood Sports TV, what he said is that he believes that Jamal Charlo out of any other fighter, and he even compared certain fighters like an Ilunga Makabu, Artabita Dimitri Bivol, Joe Smith Jr., and I believe even out of David Benavidez and Demetrius Bubo Andrade. And there's certain people overall that have this mindset. They must see something in Jermall Charlo that I personally do not. They believe that Jermall Charlo has the best chance to defeat Canelo Alvarez out of any other fighter out of him. And in my opinion, I just can't agree with that. What I think Jermall Charlo is at his best, I think he's pretty much a better version of Danny Jacobs. That's what he pretty much reminds me of. He's pretty much just as tall, just as lengthy as what a Danny Jacobs is. He maybe does not have quite as much power as what a prime Danny Jacobs had, in my opinion, but he is around that same level. Or who knows, maybe he's a tad bit stronger. But I would say that he is a little bit more technical than that of a Danny Jacobs. I think that he has a better jab. I think all in all that he is all around the more technical fighter. But if you're going to go in there as Jermall Charlo, and if your plan is to out-technique Mr. Canelo Alvarez, I don't think that that's the way to go. Just the same advice that I gave to Mr. Anthony Joshua overall to beat Alexander Usyk. If you think that you're going to outbox this dude in the middle of the ring, if you think that you're going to outjab him, if you think that you're going to be able to just completely outbox him in the middle of the ring, I think that you are very sorely mistaken. When I take a look at Canelo Alvarez, like I said, he's one of the greatest pure boxers that I've personally ever seen. Does that mean that there's not little holes in his game here and there? No, that's not what it means. But when I take a look at Canelo Alvarez, his defense is A grade. His chin is A grade. His power, his speed is A grade. The only thing in Canelo Alvarez's arsenal that is not necessarily on the A grade level would, in my opinion, necessarily be his feet, because he does tend to be a little bit flat-footed at times, and sometimes he does not necessarily have the quickest feet. But I just don't know if there's any other fighter within those weight divisions that is really going to be enough to give him trouble. And I think Canelo Alvarez, just with that one little small hole that he has, I don't think that it's enough for Jermall Charlo to take advantage of, especially because I don't think that he has that great a feet either. It is what it is. And on top of that, I think once Canelo Alvarez, once he really starts to get off on Jermall Charlo, and once he really starts to land his punches, I think Jermall Charlo is going to say, wow, this dude can really hit. I have never felt power like this before. Because Jermall Charlo, the majority of his career, he's kind of been in there with boxers that have not really been similar in size to him. It's almost very similar to that of a David Benavidez. It looks like Jermall Charlo has very, very good power, and he obviously has a very big natural punch, but it's not like he's on the same level as Gennady Triple G Golovkin. I actually had one of my commentators the other day say that, and I can't remember specifically which one, but shout out to them, and I do believe this. I have not researched it for myself, but I believe it. Apparently David Benavidez at one point in time said that he sparred with Gennady Golovkin, and David Benavidez, he pretty much is a natural light heavyweight anyway. He's pretty much a natural light heavyweight anyway. So, like I said, he's probably sparred with all sorts of fighters. He's probably even sparred with some heavyweights. And he said that Gennady Golovkin apparently was the hardest hitter, even compared to some of the other light heavyweights that he fought, that he ever sparred. So if you think that Jermall Charlo is just going to go in there and completely outmuscle and outpower Canelo Alvarez, I just don't think all in all that that's going to work. Now, I could be wrong. I've been wrong on, many things before. Now, I'm not a person that, gets all my predictions wrong or anything like that. But, it's not like I have a 100% accuracy rating or anything like that. I don't think anyone does. I'm not someone that pretends to be a Nostradamus or anything like that, but I know what I'm watching. And when I take a look at Canelo Alvarez, I just see someone that compared to his contemporaries, unless we're talking about the light heavyweight division, I think that he really is so high above everyone else. I just don't even really think that it's that close. If he were to have a fight against Demetrius Bubo Andrade, if he were to have a fight against Jermall Charlo, if he were to have a fight against David Benavidez, all those guys, in my opinion, they all have a 30% chance. Of course they have a little bit of size over Canelo. Of course they have, decent athleticism and they're decently skilled. But Jermall Charlo, in my opinion, just to talk about him specifically, I don't really give him any more of a chance than what I gave Danny Jacobs over Canelo, which is about, at the time, that was a good fight because Danny Jacobs, he had a very competitive fight with Gennady Golovkin not too long ago before that fight happened, when it came down to it. And, Canelo, he was coming off of a very close performance against Gennady Golovkin. So at the time, that was a fight that looked to be 60-40. But just taking a look at Canelo Alvarez now, I think that he even is a better fighter than what he was those few years ago when he fought Gennady Golovkin in that rematch and then when he fought Danny Jacobs. If you're asking me the question, do I think Jermall Charlo has a realistic chance of beating Canelo? Not a very high one. Like I said, I would give him about a 30% chance. in my opinion, the only chance that Jamal Charlo has in this fight. I think that not only do you have to somewhat gain Canelo Alvarez's respect, he's going to have to try to slightly outbox him here while also pushing him back at times. What do I mean by that? You're going to have to really use your jab in this fight. Jamal Charlo has a very good jab. It's a power punch-like jab. I don't necessarily think that it's on the same level as a Gennady Golovkin type of jab, but Canelo Alvarez at certain times can be vulnerable to a jab. I do think that he has gotten much better at avoiding the jab when it comes down to it. But Jamal Charlo, he does have a very good shotgun jab. It is a jab. It can hurt you. It can maybe get to Canelo Alvarez early if you can land it to the jab, torpedo it overall into the midsection to the body of Canelo. Maybe if you can go up to the head as well, mix it up. Try to get some uppercuts to the body early. Try to dig to his body. That's if you can even get in there when it comes down to it. If Canelo is not able to hurt you and counter you back. And that's another problem that I see with Jamal Charlo. And I said this in a little bit of footage that I ended up reviewing. I don't think that Jamal Charlo, I don't think he's going to realize how hard and how accurate Canelo Alvarez hits when it comes down to it. A lot of these fighters, they say, oh, well, Canelo, I'm going to completely outbox him, or, I'm going to back him up when it comes down to it. But Canelo has been in there with some of the hardest hitters that I've personally ever seen in this era. He had Sergey Kovalev backing up the whole entire time in that fight. Now, understandably, Sergey Kovalev, he was a bigger target. And understandably, Sergey Kovalev had already been knocked out twice, at that point in time in his career. But the thing is this, Sergey Kovalev still was an A-grade puncher. He just dominated over later Alvarez in the rematch, and overall he ended up, pretty much dominating and knocking out the undefeated, talented Anthony Yarde, even though I wouldn't necessarily claim that he's an A-grade fighter. But when it comes down to it, like I said, he was able to basically completely avoid every power shot of Sergey Kovalev. And Sergey Kovalev, obviously, certain people always say, well, Sergey Kovalev, he barely threw in that fight. You know why he barely threw in that fight? Like I said, people always wonder, they're like, well, why is no one going to the body of Canelo Alvarez? Why do certain people barely throw? Because certain people all know, like I said, it's different overall saying that, I'm going to go in the lion's den overall, and I'm going to tame that lion. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to completely outwork that lion. I'm going to get him overall on that leash, and I'll show you guys that I'll be able to outwork him. But then when you get in there, it's like, wow, the power is just completely different to what I thought. The skill set, the speed, the toughness, the chin, the nature of this fighter is just completely different overall to what I once thought it was going to be. I think a certain amount of fighters like Caleb Plant, like a certain amount of these fighters, even Gennady Golovkin in that rematch, I think they think overall that they have a very decent chance against Canelo. But once they start feeling the Canelo Alvarez's punches, once they start feeling his punches, once they start feeling the power and the counter-punching ability that he has and the speed, even though he does not necessarily have A-grade footwork, he can still move around decently fast overall for the type of feet that he has. That's why Canelo Alvarez, in my opinion, I don't give Jamal Charlo that high of a chance. He's very stiff, and I know a lot of people all know, they say, oh, well, Canelo, he's not fought a slick black fighter ever since Araceli Lara. There's no fighter today within those weight divisions that is like an Araceli Lara. The only one, in my opinion, that even comes close is Demetrius Boo Andrade, and I think that he's pretty much a weaker version of Araceli Lara. It just is what it is. Sure, he's bigger than what an Araceli Lara was. Lara is about, 5'8", 5'9", 74-inch reach. Demetrius Andrade is about 6'1", 6'2", with a 73-inch arm reach. And some of the debate was, more athletic, but I don't think that Demetrius Boo Andrade had better feet than Lara. I don't think that he had better defensive responsibility. I don't even think that he had a better chin than Araceli Lara. He's certainly not as technical or as precise as what Araceli Lara was. And I think Lara, in my opinion, had higher grade boxing IQ. And that was at a time when Canelo Alvarez, in my opinion, he did not adjust as well in terms of cutting off the ring. Now, just talking about possibly other opponents, but just to continue on a little bit more about Jamal Charlo. If Jamal Charlo is even going to have a slight degree of a chance in this fight against Canelo, he has to go to the body early. He has to use that, very good jab. He has to use lateral movement. He cannot just move around in a straight line. He cannot let Canelo Alvarez chase him. He has to try to move him around. He has to try to move around Canelo and work off against certain angles. Do I think that he'll be able to do that? No, I don't, because I've never really seen Jamal Charlo been able to do that to an elite degree in his career. But it is what it is. He is a very good counterpuncher. But Canelo is a better counterpuncher by a decent degree. So I just don't see Jamal Charlo personally beating that of Canelo Alvarez. But if he is going to have a chance, not only is he going to have to outbox him in certain areas, you're going to have to back him up. And you're a person all in all that has A-grade power. Maybe if you can catch Canelo Alvarez early, and if you can catch him to the body and go to the body, and maybe all in all, if Canelo, let's say that he's a little bit less defensively responsible, or maybe all in all, because of the height, the size, maybe it'll freak him out. I highly doubt it, because I've seen Canelo against harder hitters, and pretty much fighters that are on the same level as Jermall Charlo, but we'll see what happens. You gotta hope that you make Canelo Alvarez a little bit uncomfortable, and that maybe you can back him up. In my opinion, that's the only chance that Jermall Charlo has. He has to gain Canelo Alvarez's respect. He has to. I don't think that boxing in the middle of the ring with Canelo all in all is, the best thing. But it's better all in all than being up against the ropes against Canelo Alvarez, because that's the main thing that Canelo Alvarez tries to do. He's going to try to go in on you. He's going to try to break you down incrementally. And he is a master. He is a boxing master at doing that. I reviewed a video about probably a few weeks ago now, or maybe a couple weeks ago, by this one channel named Chronicles of Judo 144. And he said that Canelo sort of reminded him of Rocky Marciano. Now, of course, he said that Rocky Marciano was not as skilled as the Canelo Alvarez back in the day, and I would have to agree with that. Even though Rocky, in my opinion, he still would be in my top 10 boxers of all time, at least debatably, because for the day, when they were still a little bit sloppy, he pretty much overall was, the best for his day. But when it comes down to it, like I said, Canelo Alvarez, that's basically what he's going to try to do, in my opinion. I've seen the same thing against Danny Jacobs. Now, Canelo, he can fight on the back foot, but because of his footwork when it comes down to, because sometimes he is on the back of his heels, you maybe can get him if you can pin him up against the ropes, kind of like Gennady Golovkin. Maybe Canelo Alvarez, because he tries to kind of do, a little bit of a rope-a-dope like what Mayweather did sometimes in his career, or all know what Muhammad Ali did, and he's very good at it. He's very good at it, but maybe I would say that if you're a Jermall Charlo, especially the taller fighter, the bigger fighter, someone with some decent power, maybe if you actually gain Canelo Alvarez's respect early on, and if you can push him back, then maybe you can have a little bit of a chance. But even on the back foot, there's no promises. Because Canelo Alvarez, when it comes down to it, he also is very good on the back foot as well. I've seen him fight a multitude of times on the back foot. And he's also a very good counterpuncher on the back foot. I've seen it a little bit with Miguel Cotto sometimes, when Miguel Cotto overall would try to pressure him here and there. But when it comes down to it, like I said, Jermall Charlo, he's going to have to gain his respect early. He's going to have to land power shots to the body very early, work off his jab, have good head movement, use lateral movement. But the problem is this. It's almost like the Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury match. And let me explain. Because when I did a video breakdown, there was this one commentator that obviously it clearly went over his head. And he said, oh my God, you're comparing Jermall Charlo to Deontay Wilder? You don't know anything about boxing. How could you compare those two? I'm not comparing the two in terms of skill set. I'm comparing it in terms of overall the matchup. What do I mean by that? When Deontay Wilder was in that third fight against Tyson Fury, basically what were all the Deontay Wilder fans saying? Oh, well, Deontay Wilder, he needs to stick that jab out there like Larry Holmes. He needs to go to the body. He needs to do this. He needs to do that. He needs to have better movement. I don't think a lot of people really grasp and get how hard it is to ask a boxer that has never usually done those things in their career to all of a sudden just do a complete 180 and become way more technical than what they're used to. It's the same thing with Jermall Charlo. Do I think that Jermall Charlo, of course, is more talented than Deontay Wilder ever has been? Of course. But at the end of the day, the things that Jermall Charlo is going to need in order to beat Canelo Alvarez, I don't think that he has those abilities. I don't think that he has the A-grade head movement. I don't think all in all that he has great enough lateral movement. I don't think that he has great footwork. I don't think all in all that he has the speed. I just don't see Jermall Charlo having the natural knack to beat Canelo Alvarez unless it's a Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos situation, or maybe a Gary Russell versus John Magsayo situation. Maybe if you can get Canelo Alvarez to underestimate you and not respect you, and maybe if you can get some of them early rounds and put Canelo Alvarez in a deep grave, put Canelo Alvarez in a deep hole, then maybe you can get somewhere. But if Canelo Alvarez is going to take you 100% seriously, I just don't see how Jermall Charlo wins this fight. He's going up there against a harder hitter, a person that's a better counterpuncher, a person that's way more defensively responsible, a person that has better head movement, a person that has higher boxing IQ, a person that can fight in a multitude of ways compared to him, and a person that, to be honest with you, if he's not careful, can stop him within about 8 to 9 rounds. So like I said, Jermall Charlo, he has to do a lot in this fight, and I just don't know all in all if he's going to be able to do it, but we'll see what happens. As for Joe Smith Jr., as for some of those other fighters, what do I think that they would need to do? I think they would have to go to the body early as well. But Joe Smith Jr., in my opinion, you can debate who has the bigger chance against Canelo between some of those light heavyweights and some of the 160 and 168 pounders. If we're talking about 168 or, if we're talking about 175 pounders, for example, I don't think there's any debate about it. Dimitri Bivol and Artur Beterbiev, in my opinion, they have a clear better chance and greater chance of beating Canelo, not only because of their size, but also because of their power and their skill sets, at least overall for what they can do. They have a clear better chance, in my opinion, of beating Canelo than what a Jamal Charlo or David Benavidez does. Because when I take a look at David Benavidez and Jamal Charlo, they don't have great feet. They don't have great head movement when it comes down to it. And I'm not so quite sure if they can fight super duper great in a multitude of ways. And the thing is about Jamal Charlo, and a little bit of David Benavidez as well, but David Benavidez, the jury is still out on him because I've never seen him in a fight where the fighter has really tried to go tooth and nail with him, besides that one Romanian fighter early on in his career. Like I said, David Benavidez, when I take a look at him, and I said this in my video probably about a week ago, I don't think that he's ever really been in a fight, a legitimate fight, where a person has really tried to fight back with him and they can do it in a technical and a very good way to the point to where they can stand their ground. I've seen Canelo Alvarez do that several times. I've seen him do it against Gennady Golovkin. I've seen him do it against Miguel Cotto. I've seen him do it over Sergey Kovalev, Callum Smith, Danny Jacobs. Real power punchers when it comes down to it. David Benavidez, in my opinion, is going to go straight at Canelo Alvarez. He's going to get hit very early on, and he's going to realize, in my opinion, that, wow, this dude is a lot better than I thought. And he's going to realize, just like Caleb Plant and some of those other boxers, in my opinion, that he's in deep shit. And that if he doesn't get something off early on, that he's in hot water. And in my opinion, that's why I don't think that David Benavidez, I don't think that he's necessarily the greatest matchup to beat Canelo. I think that the only two styles, in my opinion, that maybe have a 50% chance are either Artur Beterbiev or Dimitri Bivol, but we'll see what happens. But it'll be very interesting. But Mr. Canelo Alvarez, in my opinion, like I said, he is an all-time great fighter. He is an all-time great talent. And you can take a look at this video for yourself if you don't believe me. But obviously, I'm not the only one that just shares this opinion. And Mr. Blueblood Sports TV, even though I don't necessarily mind his channel, you can tell sometimes here and there that, he does not try to address Canelo as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter. And everyone has their own opinion. That's up to you. But listen, when I just take a look at Canelo Alvarez, not only is it very clear to me that he's the #1 pound-for-pound fighter just because of his resume alone, but when it comes down to it, Canelo is debatably the most pure boxer in all of boxing right now. Like I said, when you talk about just pure boxers in terms of talent and skill set, there's Canelo, there's Vasily Lomachenko, Gervonta Tank Davis, Terrence Bud Crawford, Errol Spence Jr., Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk, and maybe later on I could maybe see a Shakur Stevenson also kind of getting into that rank. Who knows? Maybe Oscar Valdez will as well. Maybe he'll be the winner of that fight. I doubt it, but we'll see what happens. But those are the boxers that when I take a look at it, those guys are on the whole nother level compared to skills and athleticism. And that's why I don't personally see Jamal Charlo beating Canelo, because in terms of boxing IQ, in terms of skills, in terms of, overall, game planning, multi-dimensionalism, I don't think that he's going to beat Canelo. But it is what it is. But anyways, that's really about it for today. Overall, let me know what y'all think, and I'll talk to y'all later.